Public Nemesis Media. Yugoslavia, a large country from the 20th century that united so many groups of people and today invokes powerful nostalgia among a good part of the older generations. It was god-awful. F*** Yugoslavia, f*** the people that made it, and f*** you if you want it back. Stay dead forever. Fine, I'm going to explain why we should not bring back Yugoslavia. The infamous state of Southern Slavs has a surprisingly well reception. It's far from the most beloved state that no longer exists, but a good number of people miss it, which started a phenomenon called Yugo-nostalgia. And then there's a group of people, including those who are too young to have experienced life in Yugoslavia, who want that country to return. The idea is to recreate a form of a Balkan Federation where all people, or at very least the Balkan Slavs, will live together because that will solve all our problems and will become so strong nobody will mess with us. The adherents of this idea to create a new South Slavic Union or even a Balkan Federation have this very romanticized view of the no longer existent Yugoslav Federation, or at least the concept of Yugoslavia. Because they view that concept as something so awesome, they think the original Yugoslavia was this glorious progressive country. When asked why did such glorious state collapse, they tend to point fingers. Case number 1. The great powers didn't allow Yugoslavia to exist. While it's true that the powerful Western countries encouraged separatism in Yugoslavia, as its dissolution would help them gain control over that region, if anything, my issue is that they said, dissolve now, we'll fix the internal problems later, Yugoslavia would have still collapsed even if the West did nothing at all. Case number 2. It's those damn nationalists that destroyed Yugoslavia. Nationalism was always a big characteristic of every Balkan nation. The nationalists were always there, they didn't magically appear out of nowhere in the 80s. So separatism was always there, waiting for its time to shine, which came when democracy started crawling into communist dictatorships. Case number 3. It's the fall of communism then. If the communist ideology didn't die in Eastern Europe, Yugoslavia would still be around. There is some truth here. I mean, it's not a coincidence that Yugoslavia fell apart at the exact time as the Soviet Union and Czechoslovakia, but even if Yugoslavia was a kingdom like it was before World War II, it still would have collapsed sooner or later. So if the death of Yugoslavia didn't come from the outside or from the inside, or simply because the times and ideologies changed, then who's to blame? Nobody. Due to the mystifications of Yugoslavia and viewing it through rose-colored spectacles, the fans of that country tend to overanalyze its death or try to find some perpetrators for its death, when in reality the true reason for the dissolution of Yugoslavia is so simple and straightforward, it's almost hilarious. You see, Yugoslavia is a turd. You can polish it as much as you want, you can put any ideology on it, you can reshape it in any way you want, you can do whatever you want or think is right, but at the end of the day, that turd is still a turd. The very concept of Yugoslavia was flawed and destined to fail since day one. It's essentially trying to put many different nations with different backgrounds and living conditions into a single mold. When the first incarnation of Yugoslavia, known as the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats and Slovenes, came into existence, it tried to pull off the "we're all Yugoslavs, we're the same people with 3 different names, we belong to one large country." However, there were no Yugoslavs. It didn't matter that all of them were Slavs. By 1918, the Slovenian, Croatian and Serbian nations were already formed. There were more Slavic people that were forming their own nations, and there were also non-Slavs in that Slavic country. Do you seriously think such country could have worked back then, let alone now? The stuff that I'm saying is not rocket science. Pick almost any other country with too many ethnic groups that existed in the past, like say Austria-Hungary. You had Germanic people, Slavs, Hungarians, Romance people, and many others in this one empire. We all know how that ended up. Same thing could be said about the Soviet Union. You'd think that a huge country with dozens of different ethnic groups could have remained to this day. Of course not, you're a smart individual. This is not to say that countries with different groups of people can't be stable. However, in order for such country to work, assuming its largest ethnic group does not make over half of its entire population, there must be one element that has the ability to unite them: identity. Do you know why Switzerland is a stable country to this day, despite being very mixed with its population? Because all those people, regardless of their background and mother language, identify as Swiss. We can also use Germany as an example. How did so many Germanic states unite into a single country and then later get strong separatist movements? Because that unification happened in 1871, way before any national identity there was fully formed. It's exactly why Germany remains whole to this day. Unification happened before nation formations were completed, and it put the single German identity on all its inhabitants. If Yugoslavia did the same, maybe it could have worked. 1918, however, was quite late to the party. Yeah, the kingdom tried to place the Yugoslav label on its citizens anyway, but people just didn't feel it. So let's just have a decentralized, diverse country. That will make it work.
No.
There were already people with that opinion that lived before you were born, and they even managed to put that type of country into practice. I, of course, am referring to Yugoslav communists. The Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia was almost the polar opposite of the Kingdom of Yugoslavia. It was a federation of 6 republics and 2 autonomous provinces. It had a lot of ethnic groups and languages. The 1974 constitution made it de facto a confederation, and it was a socialist country instead of a monarchy. There were some people that did identify as Yugoslavs, but most of them did so because they come from a mixed background rather than some sort of cosmopolitan South Slavic feeling. Heck, even Josip Broz Tito identified as a Croat, never a Yugoslav. So you had a completely different system, and it still failed. Before you say how Tito made it work and how things got bad only after he passed away, it was bad when he was alive too. The ethnic tensions and differences were always there. The separatists and the nationalists were like that when he was still alive. And let's not forget that when the Yugoslav passport was introduced in 1965, hundreds of thousands of people left Yugoslavia. Essentially, you had 2 Yugoslavias, antithetical to each other, yet both failed. That alone should be enough to show you that no matter what you do, you can't make an inherently self-destructive concept work. I'm sorry that I had to destroy your dreams and hopes, but it's better for you to know why the idea of Yugoslavia or any other Balkan Federation should never again be tried. Now, a part of me does understand where the fans of Yugoslavia are coming from. Those fans want Yugoslavia or some sort of Balkan Federation in general because they want the Balkan people to get along and live in peace, but also become powerful and self-reliant. The path towards Yugoslavia is seen by them as the way to achieve those goals. Personally, I find it very noble that they want all of us to get along and grow stronger. If anything, I support and work towards those same goals as much as I can, but it's just the way they're trying to go is not the correct one. Here's an analogy. You may have seen a group of best friends or perhaps a couple that recently got married and they start living together for the first time. Until that point, they got along quite well. They loved each other very much, but when they started to live together, over time, they got on each other's nerves a lot and eventually started to hate each other. That's kind of like what Balkan countries are like. Compatibility is there, we can get along when we want to, but only when we have our own privacies. I would much rather have a nice neighborhood with people that are great friends than force them to live in a single household, even if that household was as big as the Romanian parliament. We need to build economic and cultural relations between one another while still having our own countries. Only that can make the Balkans a self-reliant and peaceful area. It definitely makes me glad that there are many people who want all those good stuff. I believe that every big attempt to make things better starts with ourselves. Yugoslavia should be remembered not as an ideal that needs to be tried over and over, but as a lesson. Smaller countries are powerful and united, but not unified into a single chimera. PNM signing out.